Howdy, everybody. Shasta College. Here we are. Humanities 4 through film studies. We're studying our humanity through film, through the history of film. Now, we started an early film. Remember Trip to the Moon? Have you forgotten it already? Then we moved through the midsection there in 1915, that racist film called Birth of a Nation, where D.W. Griffith changed film history by having the camera move and come in for close ups. He changed film language with a film that's got an asterisk on it for being admittedly racist. Still, it was a huge hit in its day. Then we had World War One coming in, and that changed us forever. Remember, folks, it was called the War to End All Wars. That's what they called it. And then after World War II, they started numbering the wars, which, is probably smarter. Um, and then we had the Roaring Twenties, when women getting the rights to vote, and they're cutting their hair, and they're smoking cigarettes, and there's prohibition, and they're getting drunk with men at speakeasies, and they're having the time of their lives with jazz music and dancing the night away. It was called the Roaring Twenties for a reason. During this time, we had a ton of brilliant silent films led by the three comedians, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and Harold Lloyd. Then the great serious science filmmakers like King Vidor and Abel Gance, making serious F.W. Murnau, making Sunrise. Brilliant films that still uphold today. I dare you to watch one. I dare you. Um, there might be some extra points in it if you want to write a paper about it. But you have to listen to this and text me if you're interested in something like that. You might have to write an essay about Sunrise or Metropolis. Means you have to watch the film, not go to Wikipedia and copy and paste. Get a hold of me if you're interested in something like that. You know how to get a hold of me. Okay. The quizzes are all closed. I'm going to be interested in seeing the answers you came up with. I'll be very interested. Hopefully, you watch the movie. It's the only way you're going to get the answers. You can't look Wikipedia up. You can't look that movie up, I don't believe, and just copy what you read. You have to actually watch the film. And I'll give you some answers right now. Remember, number one, what is the influences the culture had on those new auteur filmmakers? Well, folks, what was going on in the culture? Well, there was Vietnam War, Civil Rights movement, assassinations, youth market. Hollywood had lost its grip on the youth. They didn't know how to make movies for them. Also, they were influenced by French New Wave cinema. And then explain each of those, why their influence, like, say, the Vietnam War, why would it influence their films? Well, then you have to look at the films. I know you didn't, but you saw the documentary. Then you look at a film like Five Easy Pieces with Jack Nicholson, and here's a disenfranchised person going through his life wondering what he's here for, what he's doing. Well, that's what everybody was doing in that era. So the culture is influencing the storytellers. Easy Rider. It's all about freedom, man, and getting a cool motorcycle and getting a bunch of drug money and living without working. That was in the culture because the culture was letting the youth market down. Nixon was president and nobody liked him. but he get elected again. That's how we do in America. And women didn't even have couldn't even get their own credit cards without their husband's signature, folks. So if you weren't married, you couldn't get a credit card if you're a woman in the United States in 1969. Hard to believe, isn't it? You thought it was all about women just burning their bras. Not so. Civil rights. African Americans were getting the shit kicked out of them in inner cities by the white establishment because they wanted to have a voice in their own country, that they were brought here as slaves. And then their leaders, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, were assassinated because that's how much they scared white privileged America. And so that's going to have effect on the black exploitation films they're making, and the white filmmakers are affected by that also. That affects everybody. Doesn't matter what skin color you are. And it's going to affect your tone of your film and what you're going to write your movie about. And so when you see a movie like Midnight Cowboy or The Graduate about this disenfranchised person who's not fitting in anywhere, just like a ton of thousands of youth in America weren't fitting in anywhere. They didn't know where their place was in our country. That these are the influences you should have written about. Maybe you did. How did these filmmakers influence? Remember, the filmmakers look at the country. They're holding up a mirror to the country and it reflects back on them. They're taking it in. They're writing their screenplays. They're making their movies, casting their actors. Why do you think there were so many uh, anti-heroes like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman and Dennis Hopper? These aren't standard Hollywood pretty hero types. Yes, John Wayne was still out there, but he was going down in the ratings because the youth weren't buying his form of films that he was making. Although I love John Wayne films, I'm not saying I loved him as a human being because he probably believed in nothing I believed in. But I still respected his films. I do. Um, and so you go to a movie like Easy Rider or Midnight Cowboy or Five Easy Pieces or MASH or Nashville or Shampoo, Harold and Maude, and you how does that influence the culture? Well, you're seeing something you relate up there as a young person trying to struggle through college, trying to figure out your place in the world. That's what those movies were about. And so the filmmakers were influencing the audience members. When I first saw these movies, and I was a very young person, 13, 14 years old, and they completely, utterly rewired my thinking. That's how influential they were, and they still are. I still go back to these films over and over again, like good literature, because that's what they were. And please don't say, I ask you not to say sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's too easy. People were having sex and indulging in drugs, and there was rock and roll for many years before these films influenced us. Were they depicting some of that? Some of it, not all of it. There's very little use of drugs. There's very little rock and roll in these movies, but there's a rock and roll attitude, that's for sure. A rebellious attitude, and that's where the rock and roll comes in. Okay, what brought these filmmakers down? The auteur filmmaker who, for 5 or 6 years, had the power in Hollywood to get their films made by knowing what the audience wanted. Well, here comes Jaws. Then here comes Star Wars, and the Hollywood studios said, "Hey, hold on. We don't know how to make those other films. We're clueless." And they were, folks. But they know how to make a big budget B film like Star Wars. And that's what it is, folks. I know you love it. It's iconic. I get it. But it's essentially a B film melodrama, good against evil. It's not a complicated story, folks. and it's a space opera. It's a western set in outer space. Simply that. You want to see a real sci-fi film that looks like what really outer space is? Watch 2001: A Space Odyssey. I dare you. That's what outer space is, folks. Not Star Wars. There's no Buck Rogers type shootouts. There's no zipping around in cool spaceships. There's no noise. You can't hear in outer space, folks. There's no cool sounds of your ray gun going off in outer space. That's all Hollywood melodrama, B movie stuff. And it took over the entire system. And we're still doing it. Yes, folks, Spider-Man part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, X-Men part 45, 56, Iron Man part 34 and a half. These are all big budget B movies. Good against evil. Batman, Superman, all the men that wear capes. Wonder Woman. Yes, they could be marvelous stories. I'm not taking away from that. Based on some marvelous comic books and graphic novels, that's part of our culture too. That's fine. I'm not putting it down. I'm not. But if when we have a steady diet of that, it's like eating, I hate to say it, folks, don't do it. It's like eating three of your meals at McDonald's all your life. It's not going to be good. Your cholesterol is going to be way up. You're not going to be feeling that energetic or that creative if you eat at McDonald's 3 meals a day for all of your life. So we need other films to keep us going, that sustain us. That's where these great filmmakers came in. They gave us something to think about. When you watch Taxi Driver, made by Scorsese in 1975, it was a dark America, a brilliant dark America, and it makes you think. Even a horror film, brilliant horror film like The Exorcist, which is a huge Exorcist, was a huge hit in '73, makes us think about who we are. What do we believe in? What don't we believe in? It gave us, the audiences, a lot to think because these filmmakers were essentially us. They were questioning. They're trying to find their place in the world through their films. Apocalypse Now is not a John Wayne or John Ford World War II movie. It's the dark side of that. It's the anti John Wayne movie. Who's the good guy? He's an assassin. The main character, who's the good guy, is an assassin, a CIA guy who's hired to assassinate people. But the guy he's going after up the river to get Colonel Kurtz, played by the wonderful, heavily overweighted, drugged out Marlon Brando, was worse. He turned into a monster. Who's has seen Apocalypse Now? You should watch it. Got a great soundtrack by The Doors, folks. Anyway, once the studios knew how to make that, they didn't have to listen to these filmmakers telling them what was going to sell anymore. Also, what also brought them down was they started printing the box office. Jaws was the first movie to make $100 million, and that was a big story. And so it was news. That made the news more than a review of the movie. People weren't talking about the content of Jaws, they were talking about how much money it made. That was the story. And as you all know, when Hollywood makes money, they love to hear those cash registers go. That is music to their ears. And then when Star Wars came out and even made more money, and they made money on toys and marketing and pajamas. Who's out there still got their Star Wars pajamas? I know you got them. Who still wears them at night? I don't need to know this. But they made billions of dollars. That became the story, not the content of the film. That was a secondary issue. They still do that. That's the first thing they do is how much did Batman this week, which opened? Yeah, it did okay. It's not doing very well compared to what it would have done because we're changed since the pandemic when they closed all the movie theaters down and everything's streaming. We're not used to going back to movies yet. Speaking of, so if you'd have said any of those things, why their era ended, that would be most nice. If you said their era ended because of excess in their drug and alcohol, that's not the answer I'm looking for because very few of them did that. Yes, some of them did. Spielberg, I don't think has ever had a drink or a drug in his life. Peckinpah killed him. Hal Ashby absolutely destroyed him. But very few of those filmmakers I'm talking about, Coppola and Scorsese, it didn't destroy them. It didn't stop their careers. They're still making movies. Okay, that's if you did any of those in those answers, you get all 15 points. If you don't explain things, if you just give one word answers or one three-word answers, you're not going to get the points you need. Because I said, please explain. Those are essay questions. They're not true or false. They're not multiple choice. You got to think, which I hope you guys are doing. Okay, what I want to talk about briefly is the new Hollywood versus the old Hollywood. Would you say what's the old Hollywood to you guys? Anything that's probably 20 years old is old. Um, I'm talking about all of Hollywood up until 10 years ago. That's old Hollywood. How we used to do things, how movies got made, how they got financed, how we financed the movies, how respect we had for the directors or the actors or the producers, how we treated each other was a lot different than what's going on now. Who watched the Oscars this week? Do you care about the Oscars? Does it mean anything to you? I bet it doesn't, but maybe it does. Maybe you watch it because you like seeing the clothes or seeing who's dating whom. Well, there was an incident. Maybe you've read about it. Well, where Chris Rock was presenting an award for best documentary, and he made some jokes, what they all do, and now how they make jokes. Mostly, what the jokes are is at other people's expenses. They mock everything. Well, that's what comedians do now. And Chris Rock had a very lightweight joke about Will Smith's wife having a shaved head. Will Smith laughed his head off. The camera goes to his wife. She wasn't that pleased with it because she's got a condition where her hair is actually falling out of her head, and so she decided to shave it. She looks great, by the way. She's a beauty and talented, and she'll be fine. But there's a lot of people who suffer with it, and they're not so beautiful or rich or famous, and they aren't fine. But the joke wasn't about that. Well, Will Smith saw his wife's expression, decided to go up on stage, folks, walk right up the stage on live television in front of the entire viewing audience. I think it was 50 some million people. And he smacked with his right hand Chris Rock in the face. Now, at first, people thought it was fake, it was all planned. Turns out it was a real hit because Will Smith went back to his seat and said a couple naughty four-letter words, F bombs. I won't say them on here, but essentially he said, keep your keep my wife out of your effing mouth. Meaning he doesn't even want Chris Rock to say her name. He said it twice, really loud. They blipped him in American TV, but they didn't in Japanese TV. And so I've seen the Japanese version, and you can read his lips really easy. Well, nothing happened to him. No, Chris Rock doesn't want to bring charges. It's an assault, folks. It's an assault and battery. Absolutely. But a lot of people are saying because of Will Smith's privilege and he's wealthy, famous movie star, that he got away with it. Like someone else, I might say, who gets away with everything, our former president is still playing golf like he didn't do anything wrong. And you know what he did today? He called up Putin and asked for advice because he wants to run again, president again. Putin, who's the modern day Hitler in invading Ukraine, and he's a complete madman that people want out of office. Our beloved Trump called him on the phone for advice because he wants Putin's help to get back into the White House. That's where we are in the world today, folks. Anyway, so that's all people are talking about. Nobody remembers who else won any awards. It dimmed the presentation. It dimmed the other winners because all we care about is what happened up there when Will Smith hit Chris Rock. Questlove won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, a great documentary that he put together and took years to do, and nobody paid attention. They're all still talking about Will Smith. And people wonder why there wasn't security there. Why didn't somebody jump up and stop it? Because, folks, celebrity wealth gives you a lot of green lights to do stuff that you and I can't get away with. It's a privilege that gets abused all the time. Just look at the courts. How many wealthy people get off with literally murder if you have the right lawyer? So, this is really the state of where we are in New Hollywood. Some people might say social media has something to do with it, how we're very sensitive in social media. We criticize everything in social media, we mock everything. People are told they're fat and they actually commit suicide over it. That's how sensitive we become to criticism. People mock things and there's shootings over it. Somebody, some guy who lives with his mother is rejected by a woman and he goes to her work and shoots the place up. Or he goes to school because a girl didn't go out with him and he kills a bunch of students. This is how we roll now. And they advertise it on social media. They record it on social media because they want to be famous for 15 minutes, evidently. That's an Andy Warhol quote, by the way. So, whose fault is it? The world we're living in? It's gotten ruder, cruder, more dangerous than ever before, more sensitive than ever before. We're spoiled, folks. We want it all. And if something happens we don't like, it's okay to maybe to slug somebody or to shoot them. I mean, should there be consequences to Will Smith's action? We'll see. They're going to go after him now because they didn't do anything then. When I say they, I'm talking about the Academy, the people running this TV show. Nobody stood up, but supposedly they came to him and asked him to leave. That's a surprise. And he said, no, absolutely not. That's how powerful he is. Now, you or I would have been escorted out by security, but not Will Smith. He's got too much power. They make too much money off of him. On the other hand, Lady Gaga comes out for a presentation with Liza Minnelli. I don't know if you know who that is, but she was one of the stars of those movies in the 70s told you about. She won the Academy Award for a movie called Cabaret. She's Judy Garland's daughter. She's was vivacious and talented. like all get out, but she's in ill health. She's not that old, 76 years old. Maybe you think that's old, but really, people are living to 96 now. Um, she was in a wheelchair. She was having some trouble kind of putting her words together. I don't know what her issues are, if she's on medications or what. Nobody knows. She has been in ill health for several years now. And Lady Gaga helped her through it, said, "No worry, I've got you covered. I've got your back." There's some graciousness that was lacking in Will Smith. So the humanity's still out there, folks. There's still hope for us. I hope you're more of a Lady Gaga type than a Will Smith type. We don't need any more bullies slapping people because they hear something they don't like. You don't like it, walk out. Use your words, not your fists. So the new Hollywood is is kind of taking a I don't know how else to put this. It's kind of taking a shit on the old Hollywood. Was the old Hollywood a more gracious place? It was a more behaved. They didn't behave so badly. Yes, they've always behaved badly, folks. People are like that. But because we're not TikToking everything or putting everything on YouTube, it was mostly out of our eyesight. And they treated each other with look like respect of each other as humans and as artists. I don't know if we have that right now as much as we did. Absolutely. I don't believe we do. Maybe you believe differently. Maybe you'd like to slap me in the face. Um, that's it. The movies change when the culture changes, and the culture is turning into not such a nice place. And our movies reflect that. I still believe in film and cinema. It looks different now. A lot of you aren't going to the movie theaters. Maybe that's it. Era's ended. Maybe watching Citizen Kane on this is okay. You're missing out on a lot, though. But it's up to you to go make the new movies. I hope you do. Because, as you well know, everything is cinema. Look for a new, there's no signed papers this week because I got a lot of papers to grade. Look for, you got to do some readings in the book. Please, I'll send the chapters. You'll see it the next day or so. I'll sign them in announcements. And I want you to look at that documentary that follows the book. I don't know what chapter we're on. I have to look. I think it's might be CD3. I have to go look. It's the story film. It's the video. It's free on YouTube. So keep up with those two things because next week the story film will continue.